Soyala, Time of Winter, in My Soul, by It's Like Nature, Chapter 5, Death Steal Me Away. The next 2 days were very difficult for me. I tried to stay busy, but when I was alone my troubles came back all too clearly. When I was unable to eat for 2 days, Helakachu became concerned and confronted me. "My child, what burdens your heart so?" she asked me one night as we were getting ready to sleep. "Nothing," I whispered. "I know better. Your spirit is bruised like a ripe plum that has fallen from its tree. I only hope that it is not broken like a fragile egg that has fallen from its nest," she said, pushing my hair away from my eyes as we sat by the fire. "Thank you for your kindness, Helakachu. You have been a wonderful teacher, and I have felt love here in your home with you people," I replied, fighting back the tears. "Child, you sound as though you are flying away. You must not let things trouble you so. What will be, and it is all a part of the motion of this earth. You are a wonderful woman with a gentle spirit. I have known only a few white people, but you have the heart of an Indian. It is I who thank you for bringing me such happiness. Rest now, and things will be brighter tomorrow. The hunter should be returning tomorrow before dark." So I lay down and wrestled with my inner demons as I made my final decision. I would leave the village early the next morning, just as soon as I could see, and follow the river south in hopes that it might bring me close to my home and my brother Tom. I knew that if I could make it back there, that my heart might have a chance to mend, not having to see Kayaya every day as his love for Raina grew stronger. It would also make things easier on my dear friend Toto. This way maybe he could go on with his life too. Rest did not come to me that night as I tossed and turned, listening to the sounds of the night. Then just before dawn I got up, rolled up my woven blanket, wrapped a few pieces of bread and some dried buffalo in a small piece of hide, and left, leaving behind only the comb that Helakachu had given me. I made good time working my way along the river bank. The only time it was hard for me to make my way was when I couldn't see how to walk because of the tears that I was shedding. The day passed and night was approaching. I found a small nook in a rock face that was near the river, and I piled leaves and pine needles up inside of it so that I could sleep there. I was very tired, so sleep came quickly. When morning came, I ate some of the bread and meat, and once again started walking. I was feeling better, the further away that I got from the village, from them. That is until I heard the lark singing in the trees, and they seemed to be laughing at me for all the things I hadn't said, for all the times I let him walk away and never spoke the words I needed so desperately to speak. By that night I was grieving of my condition and the loss I was feeling. The north winter wind began sweeping against me, chilling me to the bone. I wasn't as lucky that night, and I had to sleep against a fallen log. The blackness encircling me as I shivered and froze. I fell asleep that night thinking how cold it was, there without him and all alone. I found myself trying to wake up sometime near the morning, and I felt so numb. When I opened my eyes, the woods were lit up from the scant light that was reflecting off of the new fallen snow. I smiled to myself and thought that I hadn't made it home, but at least I would be alone in the few hours I had left. I knew I wasn't going to be able to move, and that soon I would be frozen, so I closed my eyes and felt a peaceful feeling flow over me as I remembered Kiyayayaya's smile and his beautiful black eyes. That was my last thought, the only thing I wanted to remember as my life force. My spirit began to fade, but my fate was not yet to be played out, not alone there in the woods freezing to death. I heard my name, or I thought I did, a deep voice calling me, but it called out two names, always
Chista,
first and then
Beth.
last. But it confused me, and I knew not what to answer to. I felt like I was no longer either of those women, that I was just a lost soul drifting alone in the cold. But a part of me must have wanted to be found. A part of me must have cried out or made a sound, because soon two warm, strong arms were lifting me and wrapping me in something warm. My eyes were nearly sealed. The tears had frozen them, and they were too cold to open. So I just assumed it was my imagination, and that I was going to the place I was destined to go. And I slept.
Chista, Chista, please come back to me. Please come back to us.
A voice pleaded in the back of my mind, but I was still too cold to answer. My chest felt heavy, and it was hard to breathe. It hurt to breathe, so I tried not to, only gasping every now and then to pull a bit of air into my burning lungs. I shook so hard sometimes that I thought my bones would break, but there was always a warm, soft hand on my forehead or cheek that kept me from leaving. 6 days after I had left on my journey back to my home, I came to my senses enough to know that I was back inside of the tepee, and that Helakachu was there caring for me. I had been sick with a bad fever, and a sickness in my lungs from being in the cold so long. I wept with her as she rubbed my head and stroked my hair, asking me over and over why I had left my home. I couldn't tell her why, so I just cried in silence. But she never left my side, and she nursed me back to health. It was another 5 days before I was able to sit up and drink some broth, and my fever actually began going down. I felt strong enough to sit up for an hour or so, and I listened as Helakachu told me all about the good fortune of the hunters and how much meat and how many hides they had brought back with them. I snuggled back under my own buffalo hide, and ran my fingers over the soft brown fur as I said thanks for the animals that provided so much for these people, for my people. And that is where my new determination came from, the need to be working alongside them, preparing for the harsh winter that would no doubt be coming soon. I owed it to them to do my part. So over the next 2 days, I tried sitting up for longer periods of time, and I ate some solid food. But the best thing that I had was the warm drink that Helakachu would make for me. She said it was medicine, but it tasted too good to be something I needed. When I felt like getting up and moving around some, she built a large fire and had me move closer to it. She took my clothes off and wrapped a heavy skin around my back while she worked on cleaning me. It wasn't the warm bath that I longed for, but it would work, and just feeling clean again helped lift my spirits. She was rubbing a creamy mixture over my body, which she later told me was animal fat and dried flowers and herbs, when the heavy flap lifted on the tepee. My back was exposed, and the cold air made me shiver. I turned to look over my shoulder, and saw Kiya standing there looking at me while I sat there only wrapped in an animal skin, my hair hanging loosely down over my shoulder and down part of my back, and I saw a look in his eyes that I have never seen before. It was such a look that I had to look away. His mother told him to leave, and he silently obeyed, but he said my name before he left. Helakachu just smiled at me as she continued washing and taking care of me. 2 more days passed, and I was feeling much better, but Helakachu still would not let me venture outside, so she brought things in for me to work on in our tepee. I wove 2 large baskets. I cut small pieces of hide into long strings and rolled them onto sticks for later use, and I worked on a small loom weaving a blanket. I had forced myself not to think of Kaya or Hototototo during my period of confinement, but rather tried to think about what my life held now. I remember Tom's words to me that there's a reason for everything, and I wondered what my purpose was here in this village with these people. But it didn't matter. I loved them and wanted to be with them. It was just a shame it took me nearly dying to realize that. So I was determined to put things and feelings behind me and just try to take care of Helakachu and be the daughter she needed. The next day Helakachu said that it wasn't snowing, and that the sun was out, so I could venture outside to get some fresh air on my way to the lodge where many from the village gathered during the winter to work, eat, and meet together during the cold months. Helakachu dressed me warmly in a buffalo skin, wrapping it around my shoulders and head. It was good to be out of the tepee, and I was anxious to see Hau'hi. I had missed my friend, and I wanted to tell her I was sorry I left without saying good-bye. When I walked into the lodge I was greeted with smiles and nods. The people seemed genuinely happy that I hadn't met my fate a few weeks ago. I felt like I had let them down in some way, and that they might think that I had been ungrateful for the kindnesses they had always shown me. But my worries were soon swept away when Hau'hi came and found me. She hugged my neck, and when she pulled away I saw tears running down her bronze skin just like they were running down my pale skin. We sat and talked for a while near the fire, and she told me that it had been Hotototo who had found me, that he had come back early from the hunt to bring in his skins, and she had told him I had been missing for 2 days, so he set out to find me. It was a miracle he had found me, but she said he knew I would stay close to the river for water. She also told me that he was one of the best trackers in the village. She had just asked me why I had left when I saw Hotototo walk into the lodge. When he saw me, a look of relief flashed across his face, but it was quickly replaced with one of concern. I looked down, unable to meet his gaze, but that didn't stop him from coming over and squatting down beside me. Hau'hi said she would talk with me later, and went to the other side of the lodge to sit with some other women who were weaving. I waited, hoping Hotototo would break the tension that was between us, but it would still be hard to talk with him. I felt like I had betrayed his friendship. He gently brushed his hand across my cheek, and I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch. My heart was moved by his care for me, and I wondered if he could forgive me for what I put him through.
Why did you leave, Chista? I do not understand,
he said softly. I couldn't stay and watch him marry her. I know it sounds selfish, but I just thought it would be better on everyone if I left and went back to my home.
This is your home. You are a part of these people. You have touched many lives. But you were wrong to leave. You were almost lost to death, and would have left many empty without your presence.
It felt good being near Hotototo again, and I wondered if I could ever make him happy if he were to choose me. I was trying to piece my broken heart back together and think about moving on, until I looked up and saw Kiaya watching us from the other side of the lodge. His arms were crossed over his broad chest, and his black eyes were angry, with a hint of hurt lingering there. Hotototo saw him too, and leaned in to whisper softly in my ear.
You need to talk with him. There are things that need to be said. Let your heart be known.
Then he got up and walked out of the lodge. I looked down at the fire, and picked up a small piece of wood, tossing it into the flames. I felt him brush against me as he sat down beside me on the ground. He pressed his knee to mine, and waited for me to look up at him. When I did finally meet his gaze, his eyes softened some, but I could tell he was still angry.
I came back to the village, and they told me that you were gone. I feared the worst. I know that you are a strong woman, but the winter had set in early, and I knew you would have no shelter. I felt empty inside, so I followed after Hotototo and met him bringing you back to the village. He told me you were almost dead, and would not let me see you. Why did you leave?
I looked around at all of the people, and I felt my face growing hot and red. I was ashamed of how I felt in a way, but on the other hand, now I had the chance to tell him my true feelings, regardless of the outcome. But could I bring myself to take hold of the opportunity? I thought it was for the best, I said, looking back down at the fire.
Come,
He said, standing up quickly and lifting me up by my arm. He wrapped me in the buffalo skin and led me by the hand back outside and toward his tepee. I had never been inside his tepee before, and my heart was racing because I didn't know what he was doing. He held the heavy flap open and helped me inside, then spread a woven blanket on the floor beside the fire for me to sit on. I pulled the skin around me tightly because I was suddenly cold and felt myself shivering.
you may speak freely here. I must know why you left. You did not even say good-bye,
He said, his voice matching the anger I had seen earlier in his eyes. I was going back to my home. I have a brother at the farm.
No, that is not the reason. You never talked of going back there before.
I couldn't stay here, I began, and tears filled my eyes. I couldn't stay and see you with her every day. I couldn't lay awake at night knowing you were bedding her in your tepee, just feet away from me, and I couldn't listen while you made love to her every night, I said, and my face felt flushed as the tears streamed down my cheeks.
This make love you speak of. What is that?
I looked at him and saw a flash of something dance in his black eyes. Surely I did not have to explain this to him. I knew he had a great knowledge of the English language, so I couldn't understand why he didn't know what I meant. When you take her as your wife, loving her like a husband loves his wife, mating with her.
And why would this bother you?
I thought I could do this, but I can't. I can't tell him how I feel. This is as far as I can go. If he can't see and doesn't know, then there's nothing more to say. But I have to. This is the chance I've passed up so many times. I must speak my heart, like Hotototo said. Because I care for you, I said, looking down at the blanket I was sitting on.
How can you say that when I took you away from your home, and because of me you were hurt?
I was angry now that he was questioning me, and hurt that he was not denying what I had said about her, so I gathered my strength and stood up. The buffalo skin fell away from me and to the ground, but he grabbed my hand and slowly rose up to stand in front of me.